Okay.
In the 1930s, they had purchased Catalina Island, and for the first, well, up to about now, they've been having it for different types of environmental programs in a recreational setting. And because of the cost of land and everything, and they're not involved in any type of profit recreation, they've been losing up to $1 million in taxes. And so what they've done, they turned it over to a non-profit organization known as Catalina Conservancy, you see. And they are now going to be continuing with some recreation with the open space, and the county of Los Angeles is now under it. And Chris Jarvi is here tonight to go in more detail and explain more what's happening.
Yeah, to summarize first where I'm at. I'm with the County of Los Angeles. I'm what's called a park planner. Basically, I determine where parks should go in the county. I determine what should go into them from user surveys or a variety of different other methods. And I work on a variety of projects that really don't have any other place to go or any other niche. For instance, we work on hang gliding, frisbee golf, anything else that happens in the world. So,
Where's Oak Grove?
Oak Grove is right up above in the Arroyo, right up above the Rose Bowl. But they, just little interesting things like that.
Chris, where are you coming from? How did you get into this park planning thing?
Okay, I originally graduated with a bachelor's from Cal Poly Pomona in park administration. Decided that I knew how to, but not why. And so I went back to school to UC Davis and got a master's degree there in sort of a self-styled park planning major. I sort of got to pick my courses and worked in a very freestyle fashion. I ended up with a environmental horticulture degree, but actually took only one horticulture class the whole time I was there because I was well steeped in horticulture, but I went into the public administration field. I went some into park planning, some into the sociology courses. So
Do you think what you did was a good way to recommend somebody to go if they're going to move into this area of park planning?
It was a good way for me. I think there are better ways to do it. With a very practical background, and then to get the theoretical on the master's level was a very good way to do it. I think there are easier ways to.
How would you recommend, say you had a son who's going to go through the same process? What would you tell him to do?
I would probably have him go maybe to one of the established park administration schools, Texas A&M, or maybe back East Michigan.
You don't think Davis is good? Or
Davis is very theoretical. Cal Poly is, again, very technical. And I think there's a little bit, they lean too much both ways. The combination is good, but if you don't want to go get a master's degree, which is, I don't think, really necessary, then you don't necessarily want.
Do you feel comfortable about, say, going into either public or commercial private with what you have now, your background?
My background is primarily oriented toward public. That's the way I structured my courses. I took some political science courses in county government. I was specifically interested in the county area.
But if you decided to switch into the commercial areas like Indiana today, and I work with them pretty high in the area, could you handle commercial?
I think I could very well, yeah.
Would there be, if you were going to prepare yourself to go into, say, the commercial side of planning and setting up facilities with environmental impact and all that, what additional preparation might you pursue right now?
I think I'd go back into the public administration area. And
Public administration?
Yeah,
Rather
right.
than business administration?
Yeah, right. Public, well, probably a combination of the both. They get the management orientation. That's where I'm lacking probably the most. I've got the theoretical and
Could you do an environmental impact study if, say, somebody needed one on the side?
I've done
would like one?
I've done them, yes. I wouldn't have that much trouble doing it.
What would one cost? Does it depend on the size of the operations going in? I you have a stock fee that you charge them?
It would depend largely on the amount of technical expertise that you had to draw upon. I think obviously no one person knows all of the technical background that needs to be had to do an EIR. So it depends on the number of technical studies that you had to do to draw the information together. That's the real key to a good EIR. It takes technical studies, plus it takes a person that knows how to put those together and come up, put the right buzz phrase together and make it sound right.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to get a foundation on you, and
Sure.
go ahead and pick up on Catalina.
Right. Okay, the Catalina Island is a lot of things to a lot of different people. To the tourists, for the most part, for many years it's been Avalon, 1 square mile out of 76 square miles. And it's been the big white steamer, I imagine, to a large part. The ability to go across the island or go across the channel and see Avalon, go on the glass bottom boat and come back and say, gee, I've been to Catalina Island, isn't that great? Maybe even take an inland tour, which consists of a boat or a ride through the inland on a paved highway. To the recreationist, to the boater, for instance, it's been a place to go more off of, have a good time, and go back without ever touching the ground. To the diver, it's been a place to go dive. It's some of the best diving waters anywhere in the world, so it's important to him. But there's a large group of people. Oh, I might add to the kid. There are quite a few camps that have been there, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and whatever, that a lot of kids have been to, and that's an important experience. It's probably something they can look back on and remember for an awful long time. It's been primarily because of certain groups that they've been able to have these experiences, but it is an important experience to them. But almost to everybody, it's something a little bit different, and nobody sees it the same way. The Wrigley family, quite a while ago, decided, I think primarily Mrs. Wrigley, decided that she really liked the island. She wanted to see it preserved. The second generation of Wrigleys had the island, and they knew that if it went another generation, it was going to be segmented up through probate and the will and the whatever, to the point where it would be a lot of separate parcels, and there wouldn't really be an opportunity for the thing to really be drawn back together and be kept in one solid piece. And I don't think the Wrigleys really wanted to do that. So in about 1973 or thereabouts, they formed what was called the Santa Catalina Island Conservancy, and this is an organization like the Nature Conservancy, if you're familiar with that, that was formed for maintenance of the island area in its natural state, perpetuation of it in perpetuity for just the enjoyment of the general public. The Conservancy, while it had Mr. Wrigley as the president and the prime man at the top, was nevertheless totally separate financially and every other way from the rest of the island, or from the Santa Catalina Island Company and the Wrigleys. The Conservancy was set up, it's a non-profit foundation, and it really had no land area. It was set up in name only. In order to get the Conservancy going, the Wrigleys knew that they were going to have to get some kind of good financial background to the thing, and they looked around and they looked through California law and found what was called an open space easement. And an easement is like a utility easement on a piece of land. It's a right to a piece of land, and it doesn't mean that you own the entire piece of land itself. And say if the utility company was coming through and wanted to put their line through, they would get the right to the land. Let's say they're going to have a cross arm, and underneath that cross arm, you still might have use of it, say in landscaping and that sort of thing. But they want to hold the right because their cross arm comes over the top of the land. In our particular case, we got the development rights to the island. We got their rights to develop anything within that open space. And so they came to us and they said, here, we found this law, this open space easement law, we'd like to donate our rights to develop the land. In return, you'll give us a tax benefit, because if we can't develop it, we shouldn't be taxed to the full market value of that land. And we looked at it and we said, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Here we have a chance to almost double the amount of parkland, all the parkland in LA County in just one fell swoop. And it's not too bad, but that land isn't good enough if it's open space and 21 miles away from the mainland. So we want some development rights. We're going to have to do something with it if the people are going to enjoy it. So after some manipulation, we got some development rights with their approval. Essentially, they gave us the easement, we gave them the tax break, and they gave us rights to go in and do certain types of recreation development. Anywhere in the easement, as long as, number one, we had their approval, and number two, that it didn't ruin the open space character of the land, that we weren't doing something to the detriment of the land. So on February 28, 1974, we went ahead and consummated the open space easement. I brought some slides along this evening just to show you some of the things that we're interested in on the island. I might say that the primary purpose, primary objective of the easement is to leave the area in its natural state. And number two, try to, if we do develop it, try to develop it with some recreation benefit to the general public so that there is something there for people to appreciate about the island. Its natural characteristics are appreciated. So I brought some slides along. I'd like to just show you a few of them.
Chris,
yeah.
This concept of what you're going to do in development, how are you going to get your input? I mean, what are the pressure groups that are going to have the greatest effect upon your thinking?
I'll go into that after I show you the slides. We've got, that's all we're done.
So we'll do something.
Catalina Island is, unbeknownst to many people, runs more in an east-west direction than it does a north-south, although most people feel that it runs north-south. Approximately 21 miles long, it's 8 miles wide at its widest point, comprises about 47,000 acres, and the isthmus is only maybe 3/4 of a mile to a mile at the in the middle there where it restricts. You have what's called the east end of the island and the west end of the island. I don't know how much board I have with this thing. If for you that are familiar with Avalon's right in here. This area up in here is known as the isthmus, the west end. And this is Little Harbor. I'll be talking about Little Harbor a little bit later. It primarily drains this whole area, this much of the island in through here. Most of the Boy Scout, Girl Scout, YMCA camps are located along this side of the island, on what they call the leeward. The other side is called the windward side. The portion that people normally see in the trip that they take to the interior of the island is it starts up through here, runs up around like this, down to Little Harbor and back up this way. So they actually see a very small portion of the island. As I said, the island is a lot of different things to a lot of people, but I think for the most part it's pretty foggy. I think maybe if they have any image of what the islanders call Catalina, they have, or what the islanders call a rock, it's something maybe just some esoteric thing out in the wild someplace. There is a mountain chain very much like the San Gabriel Mountains, but it's totally surrounded by water and a closed system. Closed from the standpoint that little can get in and little can get back out again.
Is it volcanic or is it a drowned mountain range?
It's a mountain range. It's been shut up. It's not volcanic, no. Again, many people think that there's very little there. If you look at it in a total overall perspective, if you first hit the island and look around, you may feel that way too, that it's just more or less like the surface of the moon. But as you start taking a closer look, you start seeing the real unique value of the island. Fog more or less lifts. This is looking toward the west end of the island from the Little Harbor area. Just a general panoramic to give you a feeling of what it looks like. That particular area, that particular area is in through the middle to your right is one of the only, I think, one of 3 natural harbors in the, it's called Cat Harbor in California.
Are we into the area that you're?
Yeah, I have a map there. I'll show you after we get done with the slide. But approximately 85 to 90% of the island is in the open space easement. There are only a few areas, Avalon and the Two Harbors area, or the Isthmus, that are actually not in the open space easement. This is Parsons Landing on the west end of the island, with the mainland behind. Again, getting a closer perspective, you start enjoying what there is to offer there. It's not what many people perceive a tropical isle, even though Wrigley tried to bring in palm trees and make it look like that. You have to take it for what it is. It's a natural area, it's got very unique things about it, but it's not the South Sea Isle that a lot of people would like to make it out to be.
What's it comparable to here on the mainland as far as the terrain and the
Probably Santa Monica Mountains. Yeah. Very rugged terrain. Extremely steep, almost 1-to-1 slopes in various areas. This is some natural rangeland that's been brought back to the natural from being overgrazed. Starting to get a little bit closer perspective of it. These are some trees that were planted by Forrester and Firewood back in the 30s. Nothing like this. I don't think there are any natural pines on the island. This is just some areas that are being revegetated now. Now we get into a little closer perspective and you really start feeling what there is to Catalina. This is in Bull Rush Canyon, an area that's totally closed off to any public access right now. An area that we want to save and very carefully look at before we develop. Extremely beautiful area, water running down through it, just nothing like it. There are some what are called endemics on the island. These are plants and animals that exist nowhere else in the world. This is a silver fox that is endemic to the island. I don't know what makes it that much different than what we have on the mainland or in Southern California, but it's extremely rare to even see one of these creatures. I've seen one, and it's just a tremendous thrill to be able to walk through nature and run into one of them. They're primarily nocturnal, and so they don't come out. Mule deer on the island, they've been imported, but again, a pleasure to see, something different. They are hunted on a seasonal basis in order to manage the game herds. They have a rather interesting phenomena. These are quail, obviously, but they're mountain quail. Normally in the Southern California area you have valley quail, but because of the fact that the island was separated from the mainland many years ago, the mountain quail remained, somehow got stranded on the island, and they procreated and sort of become a species in themselves, not totally indigenous to the area, but they're unique, and they're again hunted as a game bird. Only when there are enough of them around. They've had very poor hatches in about the last 4 years and have closed it down to hunting, but they opened it up again this year. Makes a good game species for hunting. Back in the 30s they had a movie in which they brought in some buffalo. Buffalo remain more as a tourist attraction than anything else. They're obviously not native to the area, but they're manageable and are kept on there to get the oohs and the ahs from the tourists, and very effective that way. They're bred. They bring new ones down from Montana and they sell, if you've ever bought buffalo from Safeway, you probably got it from Catalina Island. They sell most of their buffalo meat to Safeway. This is the scourge of the island. The goat, they were originally brought in when the early Spanish explorers came looking off the California coast. They brought their goats with them and they dropped them off on islands where they could, so that they'd have a fresh source of meat when they came back through. The goats have taken over the island to the point where there are areas that are literally large enough, gullies literally large enough to stick a freight train in. On the west end of the island, they completely stripped the vegetation off the island, and where you have areas that have a one-to-one slope, this is totally tearing it up. There's still a feeling in the Santa Catalina Island Company that this is wind erosion or some other weird type of thing that's happening. They don't realize what's happening. So in our role with the island, we have to sort of bring across the fact that there is damage being done. It's being done by the goats. The goats are kept as a game species, and without some sustained yield program, we're going to have real problems in the future. We could completely wipe out certain indigenous species of plants. Don't really know why I left that in, except it's a test plot for revegetation. Some of the revegetation that's going on now is drilling. They're plugging in new grasses and trying to get hardy grass, primarily trying to get it to grow again. This is a good example of where the goats are on one side and where they're starting to bring it back on the other. They just totally wipe out certain areas. And I've been to where it's about waist high. The grass is waist high on the areas that are fenced off. This is an area that's slowly being brought back after it was left. It's extremely important. The only source of water on Catalina Island is rainwater. It's caught in watersheds and kept in reservoirs. This is the Middle Ranch Reservoir, the Avalon water supply that you can see off in the distance. And you can see how important it is to maintain the watershed in here and get a slower release during the year than to just push it off with the goats and just let it rush out. This is Middle Ranch again during a rainstorm. As you can see, it's difficult to control once it does get going and the watershed's been damaged. You get a lot of erosion, you get a lot of problems, and you get a polluted water supply that is a problem in Avalon. Several areas, this is again in Bulrush Canyon, several areas are just dammed off just to catch water. These aren't domestic water supplies, they're for the wildlife. And again, a very important part of the range management practices within the island. This is Middle Ranch Reservoir. It looks pretty big, it really isn't. There's some pretty good fishing there. We're trying to work some of this into our recreation program that we have over there. This is something that's been going on a lot, well, not a whole lot, relatively speaking, to the type of development that's happened before in Avalon. It's happening a lot. There are several developments in Avalon, condominium developments and whatever, that are causing some big scars on the land. Something that is outside of the easement, but something that we watch pretty carefully, because it can have an effect on those people that are entering into the easement through Avalon. We have no effect on the thing, but we can work with Mr. Wrigley on trying to see that not too much environmental damage is done. Other important aspects of the island are the geology, the rock formations, the lichen and whatever, geology through the rocks, just a gee whiz picture, similar one. The archaeology, Little Harbor in particular, where our campground is a gold mine as far as archaeology goes. UCLA has done a number of studies. I saw their maps on their plotted sites, and on a USGS map, about every quarter inch there's another archaeological site all over the island. There was quite a population here, probably 2,000 to 3,000 on the island at one time. They traded with the mainland. There's the grave site that they were digging, human remains. This was their main object that they traded. These are steatite grinding bowls, and extremely valuable commodity back in the Indian days. They see how far the Indians ranged by the number of bowls that they find, say, in the desert that were made out of Catalina steatite. This is where they carved them out. They carve them out of the soapstone and break them off and carve out the inside. These areas are still available, and we can still interpret them with our recreation programs. Some very interesting plant life over there. There's 5 endemic plants. That's a valley oak. This is a Lanthanus Catalina ironwood, which is an endemic. There it is up close, an extremely rare species. All the plants of this type on the island are the same height and the same age. We're not exactly sure why they're not reproducing, but this is one of the things we want to look into in the long-range study, that the island hasn't burned off in a good long time, and it could be that fire is the trigger that'll get these going again. But we've got it, they're extremely hard to reproduce any other way, from cutting seeds or anything else. So there's got to be some trick that we haven't learned yet at getting them growing. If we don't do that, they're going to completely be wiped out. There won't be any more. This is the flower up close. This is Catalina mahogany. It's not an endemic, but almost only found on Catalina Island. This is manzanita. There's an interesting thing about manzanita. Most of the plants that I first noticed when I went over there, almost all the plants are larger than you'd find on the mainland for some reason. It's probably the fact that they get more moisture, maybe lower elevations. I don't know exactly what it is, but for manzanita, all your other plants that are your roosts that are common in Southern California are about 1.5 times the size that they are on the mainland. This is the manzanita flower. Extremely pretty in the springtime. This is St. Catherine's lace, one of the endemics. There's a whole field. This is the Catalina Island bush poppy. Just beautiful when it gets out. It's a big flower, about 1.5 inches around. This is the wild tomato, they call it. And the berry of the wild tomato. One of the interesting aspects of Catalina Island is the history of it, and certainly that should be brought out in any programming that we do. It was once a large cattle ranch. When the current land manager on the island right now, Doug Prost, was brought to the island straight out of college and asked, how do we make the cattle, or how do we make this a successful operation? And his recommendation was get rid of the cattle, because there's just no way you're going to run it any other way. So the cattle were taken off the island. They just couldn't make it. There wasn't enough water. Again, this is a good example of the ecological balance. There wasn't enough water to support the grassland, to support the cattle. And no matter what you tried, the amount of range that you had to put into the beef to get something out of it was not economical. So it became a simple problem of economics. This is Middle Ranch. They still grow some of their own wheat or some of their own grasses, alfalfas, for their cattle that they do have there, but only on a limited basis. This is in the springtime, just beautiful, certain times of the year. Again, Catalina has many moods. This is obviously sunset. Another one right out of Little Harbor where we have our camp. Just a beautiful area, an area that needs to be capitalized on. There are many things that are of value and things that we can do to it. We've got to take it very closely, or very slowly, so we make sure that what we do is not degrading to the environment. That's almost, that's 45 degrees. That means one down for one across on a horizontal vertical scale. That's about as steep as they get. They get a little bit steeper, but not much.
You didn't show any, they have wild pig, wild boar.
Yeah, they have wild boar. I didn't have any slides of them, though. That's one of the other game species that they have. Again, it has caused a great deal of environmental degradation because of the fact that they like to root. They have these big tusks, and they get down in underneath these trees that have a lot of new plants coming up, and the trees are sort of the protection, especially your Quercus suber, your live oak, or not your live oak, your scrub oak. And these plants get in there. I've seen them turn over just like a farmer come through and plow a hillside. They'll turn a whole hillside over just to get the new roots and the little grubs and things that come out.
What about snakes?
They have rattlesnakes. They have a couple of different varieties, a little red one and your regular California snake, whatever your, I don't know what the red one is, but there's a couple of them there. And it's a constant worry for the camps that are along the coastline.
What about your sea lion populations or otters and sea elephants? Do you have any incident of those now coming there?
Yeah, we have sea lions.
Is there a rookery there on the island at all?
There is up on the west end. Yeah,
west end.
yeah, right out on the point. They're
It used to be
pretty
settled
well
a long time ago. I used to see elephants.
Yeah. Well, the sea lions, they're such a kick. I've seen them 3 or 4 times that I've been over there. Go down on the shore and way back in the stick someplace and sit down, and he comes along the shore and looks up out of the water and watches us for a while and takes off. Just really a thrill to me, and I've come from a natural experience to see those sorts of things.
Do you have statistics on the numbers and all the species that are on the island and the water surrounding and all that? Is that?
No, we don't, and this is one of the first things we want to do in our long-range study, and I'll get into that in just a second. I'll tell you, okay, I've kind of given you the setting. I want to leave it on to warm or cool the bulb off first, so if you don't mind, just for a few minutes, and then there's a switch on the back side that you just let down. Kind of feel where the air's coming out and see if it's cooled off. We had about 10,000 people go through it this year. I think it was very successful, considering the fact that a lot of people still don't know about it. We developed it for the handicapped as well as the inner city kids, and our programs were geared to whatever you wanted. If you were a school class that wanted a lot of education, you got that. If you didn't want to do anything but go over there and camp, you got that too. We had some real problems relating to the inner city kids. They got over there and said just flat out, I don't like this place, because they weren't prepared for the outdoors, and that's part of our job in the future is to try to let them know what they're going to see and not make them do anything. Sort of prepare them for the experience, so when they do see it, they enjoy it, taking them over there right off and yanking them out of their environment, sticking them in a totally foreign environment. Yeah.
I resist your statement that you're making, but I'll talk to you about it later.
Okay, fine.
Okay, but I work for LA County, and I know many of the people went over there. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Depends on which group you're talking about.
Okay.
If it was Supervisor Hayes' group, it was not a good experience. If it was Al Dobie's group, it was a good experience. You go with Al Dobie?
No.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about it.
No, Alan Dobie's group was a success, and I think very much so. I went over and saw that one. So, again, I didn't get into specifics because I didn't know the audience. But okay, so we got our original programs going. They've been going for a year, and at the same time, we wanted to try to get a long-range plan going that we could sort of find out what the island was all about, and again, try to do some developments on it that were environmentally sensitive. We worked with the Wrigley family and the conservancy. Oh, I might add in the meantime, well, we got this interim plan started. The Wrigley family, because they finally had their tax break and because they got their lawyers working diligently, they were able to transfer the remaining 41,000 acres, or essentially the entire area of the easement. And, right, yeah. Everything that is not within the red, this area is outside the easement, this area is outside the easement, these areas, this and these little spots in through here. Everything else is easement. This, and all of this, and all around there, and this. Wrigley family was able to pull a stock transfer and land donation that essentially gave $16 million worth of land and stock portfolio to the Catalina Conservancy. So it took over, in effect, doing the same thing, or with the same approach that we were taking, which is conservation and recreation for the open space area. We were working with them at the same time. Yes?
You mentioned the conservancy.
Yes.
Some of the people that are out from Washington made on the planet.
Okay, I'm just starting into that.
Okay, because I didn't know if you were connected.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, now at the same time, we were working on trying to work up a proposal for a long-range plan. And we solicited some proposals. One came from what's called the Center for Natural Areas, CNA, which is an affiliated Smithsonian Institute. It's a nonprofit institution, I should say. It's a nonprofit research organization. They've done some really good studies, one in the Alaskan coastline and one in the coastline of Maine, for the entire state. This particular area, because of the unique combination of private and public, and because it was a closed system, here you have an island out in the middle of the water, very little that can get into it or out of it without very strict controls. They were interested in this study. They gave us a proposal, and we've begun a 2-year study. We're in the first phase of it right now to completely assess everything that there is on the island, the biota, the geography, the archaeology, you name it. It'll be looked at in detail. They'll look at all the research that's been done before. They'll identify data gaps that need to be filled in. They'll go into recreation carrying capacity. They'll go into attitude surveys of what people are interested in on the island, what should be done to it in the future. And they'll take all of this data, assimilate it, sort of regurgitated into the Catalina Conservation and Recreation Plan. The entire plan is costing about $575,000. First phase is going on right now. It's cost about $210,000. We have broad-based goals, both the conservancy and the county, and what we want out of this, and essentially they're pretty much the same. We want the island to be what it is. If in areas where the goats have pretty well stripped off the vegetation, we want a conservation plan that will bring it back into its natural state. If that means completely eliminating the goats, if that means maybe cutting them down and working a sustained yield program, that's what we want to do. Same thing with the deer, the buffalo, any other element that you have on the island. We want to bring in introduced species for, say, game hunting or some other type of recreation. We'll have to look at that in relation to this balanced ecosystem that we'll be working out. Not only will we get a conservation plan, but we'll get a recreation plan, those types of recreation that can go on the island without the degradation, again, of the resource. So that we have a little bit of both, stressing, though, not the recreation, stressing the conservation. I think one of the most important things we want to get out of this is a bent toward not recreation in the ball bouncing type sense, but recreation in the environmental education sense. We don't want people to come over here and say, gee, we're losing $275,000, $260,000 a year in taxes. We want them to come over and really appreciate the other way. There you go. We want them to appreciate why they are paying these taxes and why it's so important to keep this area, which is unlike any other by the fact that it's 21 miles from one of the largest major metropolitan complexes in the United States, why it's important to keep this in its natural state. So basically that's where we're at. We're in the middle of this, or we're at the beginning of the study, and we'll be on it for the next 2 years.
You know, one of the big concerns is the transport of people to that nice isolated.
Exactly.
Is that, we're going to get a bridge?
Well, I've got a proposal that I'm working on right now. Supervisor Hayes wants to buy the SS Catalina. It hauls 2,000 people at a whack. But again, we want to look at the island as a system. We want to determine carrying capacities, how many people can go over there, and then from that, judge what kind of transportation systems should be developed. We don't want to necessarily start with the transportation systems and figure out how many people we can haul over there and then figure out how we can accommodate them. We want to do the other way around. It could be very true, and I'm almost certain it'll come out, that the SS Catalina would not be the type of operation we want, hauling 2,000 people at a time. There are there's a transportation carrier right now, Harbor Carriers, that is doing a much better job than they have in the past, than we've seen in the past. They haul smaller boats. They now have a triangular tour between Avalon, from Long Beach to Avalon to the Two Harbors area and back to Long Beach. This is ideal from our standpoint, say for backpackers that can come into Avalon, hike across the island, get on at Two Harbors and head back again. They can spend, say, a whole week on the island and pick it up. That runs full-time during the summer months and only on weekends during the winter months. And these are the types of things that we want to try to encourage. We don't want to really keep the old modes of transportation if they're antiquated in terms of the island as a resource.
Will private boat owners be able to make landings any place?
Yeah, essentially nothing's really changed from that standpoint. We would like to take some of the tidelands areas and take away not take away, but try to limit the power that Catalina Island Company has, and they still have the mooring rights to almost everything all the way around the island. We'd like to make them into underwater parks to balance with the reserve on land. so that you have a part that is just not the land itself, but continues right in underneath the water and out a certain distance. Part of the study will be not only the study of the land, but it'll be the study of the water resources and the various support systems that are with the island. You can't look at the island by itself. You've got to look at mode of transportation. You've got to look at sewage, water resources, and those various aspects to sort of look at the total system as it exists.
Have you set any kind of priority on which groups of people would probably most desirable to go there? They have to qualify to go there. This is coming out of light areas. You're going to qualify to go and use it so that we can go there. Is that?
At this point, no, we haven't worked on anything like that. We're going to be trying some attitudinal surveys to find out, first of all, what people think of Catalina Island and what they would like to see done with it. This, of course, will have to be weighed against what can be done with it as an island, as a resource. But exactly where we go with it is still yet to be determined by a lot of things that are in the study design. We're not making any assumptions this early in the game.
Well, there's no chance at all of it ever going to become a larger residential development if they would have the water situation is a big problem.
It can't be developed at all except in those areas that are owned by the Catalina Island Company, which are outside of the easement.
Which could be considerable development if they develop condominiums.
If they could get the resources, because one reason it hasn't been developed up to now is the water and sanitation. And we'll be studying it not for their purposes, but for recreation purposes. They're going to have to do their own studies to determine the developmental potential.
Do they control the water now?
The Southern California Edison Company has the total rights to all utilities over there, including water. So the Edison Company controls the water.
The Balboa Bay Club development, one of the ones.
Right, that's within the city of Avalon.
And there's another development besides.
Right in town there. Right.
Is that sign of the times of what's going to come as far as Catalina Island land is?
It's really hard. It's my feeling at this point that the Wrigley family is holding off to see what happens with this master plan. And depending on how the interior of the island goes, I think that they'll want to develop the rest of the island. They still, although Avalon is owned, while there are a lot of people who live on Avalon, it's about 90% owned by Wrigley. The land is all leasehold. So at some future date, he could pull back all those leases or just not renew them, and he could take over that entire area and redevelop.
Shoot condominiums up. He's picked out the spots that have the best water drainage, and then he's got himself a park maintained by the county for these condominiums.
That's right.
Possible.
Right.
No way to stop him from doing that.
No, it's his land. I think that the only way you could stop it is through regional planning, and I wouldn't, bet any money on those guys. He's got a good situation going, but at the same time, I think we have a good situation going. One of the areas that we've been looking at seriously, and we may have some problems in dealing with him, we may not, is that opening up White's Landing, which is within the conservancy, but not in the easement. White's Landing would make a fantastic entrance point to the conservancy and make a good headquarters for the conservancy and the county together, and just circumvent going through the Isthmus area or the Avalon area. We've got real problems with going through either area because he has a concessionaire on the Two Harbors area, the Isthmus, and they've got the town on the other end. Now there are certain services that are offered by the town that are extremely valuable at this point for us, and until we had an overall plan and knew how we could develop some of the other areas consistent with our own plans.
You can't really do anything but camp. You can't really do facilities yourself. You can't do any facilities.
If they detract from the open space character of the land, that's correct. If we can show that there's some benefit to the open space character, we can do that.
But really could disapprove it.
He could disapprove it, right? Or now the conservancy.
It seems like what Mr. Tillman was saying, that there's a chance that the whole park could be just for the people that are in these condominiums, or people that can afford to either sail out there or pay. I think the cheapest I understand is about $8.50 round trip for the boat. And it seems to me like if this park is going to contribute to the betterment of the entire metropolis, so-called, that we'd have to come up with a cheap source of transportation to get the people out there so that they could afford to use these 47,000 acres of parking.
It's a good point, and it's the one hammer that we hold over their head right now, and we are in negotiations, and we're very deeply in a good deal of the money that's being paid for the planner. We feel it's our responsibility to make sure that it's useful to people, and that, like I said, the big hammer that we hold over their head is the fact that we can always say, okay, Mr. Wrigley, you start not doing this for the benefit of the people of Los Angeles, and we'll pull our money back. We'll take our ball and go home. To the heck with you. And that's an extremely strong influence on them, and they're very aware that we've got that hammer.
You could pull out and then start taxing when you get to that land?
That's correct. And there's no way that the Conservancy could exist under those conditions. If it did happen, we've got a neat thing going, because if for any reason the Conservancy doesn't make it, it automatically reverts to the National Park Service, and if that doesn't work, it goes to the state, and if that doesn't work, it goes to the county. So it is in perpetuity as parkland, whether it's the Conservancy or any of the other organizations. Wrigley cannot get it back. Irrevocable donation. Yes?
What projected role and what is the current role of the Department of Beaches of the county going to play with this whole activity going on?
We have worked with beaches in the long-range planning efforts, but for the most part right now they work in a enforcement capacity and a life-saving capacity on the island. They work with the sheriff in making rescues for the boaters that come in, and but they haven't really gotten into the planning role. Theirs is a safety function, more or less like the police function.
What I was wondering is, Department of Beaches also includes a lot of maintenance personnel, and also the lifeguards are all paramedically trained.
That's correct.
Is a projection of something like that of actually having more lifeguards stationed there in conjunction to cover up for heavy summer camping activities and such?
Right.
Or are you going to try to pull in special paramedics out of town? Or are you going to try to have park rangers for it? Or, I mean, what's the role of the recreation department in there? Are they going to actually have recreation directors around there? So how's it going to go?
Again, it depends on the ultimate plan. Everything's so iffy at this point. It depends on what we come out in ultimate carrying capacities. But what we have to do is determine what types of uses that are going to go on the island, and then determine from there what types of support services we're going to need. And if it includes more maintenance people, or more beach personnel, or more parks people, or more sheriff, or just what it might be, then we'll bring in those types of people. Yeah.
Who are the people from the Department of Beaches are involved in the planning stations? Do you know?
Both Ken Johnson and Joe Chesler. Joe Chesler is their new parks planner, beaches planner, or facilities planner, or whatever. I don't know exactly what it is.
Another subject, since you're involved in planning, have you heard what they're going to do with the new acquisition next time in the code?
I haven't yet,
I mean,
no.
the latest I heard, they would put up signs of trespass. But
I really don't know. If you wanted to give me a call, I could sure find out, or I could give you the name of the guy that would know.
Let's direct it back in resource right now.
Yeah.
Would like to stay in the resort kind of a place. Right now, there's no place to stay over there. Yeah.
You're right.
Now, is that going to be a possibility? Something of that would be.
One of I neglected to say, within the easement, one of the stipulations by the Conservancy was that there be a possibility of developing resorts within the area. One at one at Middle Ranch, one at Rancho Escondido, and one at the airport, with the idea that they would be a resort type of a facility. One of them, say at Rancho Escondido, which is their Arabian horse show ranch, might include reverting the stalls back into motel rooms or something like that, keeping the original architecture, but providing for this sort of thing. But again, the Island Company has sort of held off on anything like that until we do get a long-range plan. Another idea has been taking these areas that are outside the open space easement, but within the conservancy, such again as White's Landing. We see that as having great potential, not only for the people that don't have resorts to go to, but as for, say, a recreation program that would not be directly connected with the open space easement itself.
And there's a difference between the conservancy land and the open space easement?
Yes. Again, the conservancy owns the rights to the land. They own the land. The open space easement is an easement of certain rights to that land. But there is only a couple areas, and I think it only totals about 1,000 acres, and there's a reason that this happened, that sort of a technical reason, that certain areas didn't get included in the open space easement that were eventually given to the conservancy. And primarily it dealt with the zoning on the land. There were certain areas that had zoning on it that were within a parcel lot that couldn't be declared open space at the time that we wanted to get the open space easement. Therefore, they had to get a good legal or an easy legal description. They had to be dropped out of the easement, and they may at some future date be put back in the easement. It's to the conservancy's benefit that they do get put back in, because then they get the tax break on it. And they essentially are tied to what they can do with the land anyway, and they can't get a tax break any other way.
But that is special land, you could put something like
at this
concession
time,
in.
right, very definitely. And we've been looking at White's Landing for that type of thing. I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility that Wrigley might not do that type of thing in the Two Harbors area especially, or in the redevelopment of Avalon if it were to ever redevelop. I think that'd be a little bit more difficult. He's got total control of the isthmus and really no development there at all. But we would hope, I think ideally, that the support facilities be developed outside the open space easement. We leave it as natural as possible rather than developing these Rancho Escondido and Middle Ranch and that sort of thing. Leave them primarily the operational ranch and the show ranch. I think it sort of cheapens the open space easement. And any development that they do within these areas would have to have our approval. So it's a checks and balances system on it.
You don't approve what happens on Wrigley's land, though, the land that he's retained.
No. Just the areas within the open space easement.
Is the
Yeah.
Army Engineer Corps or Sierra Club or Scripps Institute or really expressed interest in the island?
There's a tremendous amount of interest that we receive from a variety of different sources on the long range study. The Coastal Commission is extremely interested in the plan as a sort of a pilot project for ideal coastal planning, you might say. Sea Grant through USC has a laboratory over there. They get federal funds for various types of marine research, and they can see some tying in. We hope this island will be a sort of research laboratory for time to come, that where we have areas that are unexplored in terms of their scientific value, that we can have ongoing studies through the various university systems, say Caltech for some of their plant studies, UCLA for their archaeology, Cal State, what's the one out there? Anyway, whoever else does archaeological studies, USC for their marine studies, and whatever. So we'd have continuing ongoing research with the university system. That information could be used then to plug into educational programs, recreational or environmental education
What
programs.
about the Los Angeles Arboretum? No, they're separate from the county.
No, they're not separate. They're another department. It's the Department of Arboretum.
No, they could establish botanical gardens on there.
They could. Our idea, though, will be to leave the island as much as natural as possible rather than bring in introduced species. There are some possibilities where we're having some trouble with introduced species, bring in a species that's very similar, although not exactly the same, as the species that, say, is not doing well on the island, and hope that it would come in and reproduce and maybe do a little bit better than the native. But as much as possible, we want to stick to the natives.
We're getting ready.
Yeah, we're getting there.
You want to tie it off, sir?
Well, much has been said. I can't say any more.
It sounds to me like if I want to open a resort at Catalina Island, I better go see Wrigley. We get the concession right away.
Not a bad idea.
How long is the study? Did you mention how long is the 500,000 plus study?
2 years. Yeah.
Will it be done in 2 years?
Yes.
That's terrific, very interesting, Chris. We really appreciate you coming down. We're going to be on with you for the next couple of years, making sure that...
Well, I might add that what we're doing as part of this study is we have both an advisory group and a think tank group that will be working with the study. The advisory being sort of a problem resolution type of a group to sort of head off many of the problems that we have with the environmentalists making up half the group and recreationists making up the other half. The second area will be sort of a think tank group. Hopefully it's my idea to get people that are just good thinkers, not necessarily recreation people, but people that come up with innovative ideas that can, at certain key points along the study, sort of redirect where the study is going.
You have not gone to Arthur Little or Stanford Research Institute or Battelle or any of the big think tanks?
Not at this point, but it doesn't mean that we won't. This is, again, we're in the formulative stages of working that out. As a matter of fact, it may be thought out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but we haven't at this point. But I think there's some real potential. I especially want to get people out of the recreation field that can come up with some ideas that are not the standard, the type that I have or anybody else has.
Sounds like you did a great job with it.
Do you foresee a nuclear plant on the island to send in
No.
medicine?
No.
One question, one very important question.
Doesn't mean it won't happen now. They've got some pretty tight rights in there.
What about employment outlook for the islands with all this development going on with the county, et cetera? Do you see increased jobs available there?
Again, it's pretty difficult to tell. I doubt very much if there's going to be a great deal, great increase in jobs in the future, based on what we're doing right now.
Certified goat herders.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine with doubling your acreage, you would have, you'd have to increase your personnel to some extent.
Well, again, it depends on what the long-range study comes up with.
Okay.
Very good.